Welcome to Reels on the Rocks, the show where your hosts Whiskey and Sweet Tea discuss film from the unpretentious perspective. Today is Election Day, so while we all anxiously await the results, we will be discussing Alexander Payne's acclaimed film, Election. Please be advised, spoilers are ahead.
Welcome back to another Reels on the Rocks, everybody, on this very special election year. So, obviously, this year's been nuts, so I figured what would be a good movie for an election year that won't stress people out, and I thought, hey, the Alexander Payne comedy from 1999, it's funny, it's about a school election, it's a pretty good movie about politics, even though it's, it's a great movie because there's no actual politics in the movie outside of like these characters, there's definitely like we'll get into like the actual messaging and everything like that. But I picked this because it's very funny. I feel like Alexander Payne is a director who doesn't get enough credit. Fun fact, he's actually my dad's favorite director, which is part of the reason I thought of doing this.
I thought you were about to say he's my dad's friend. I'm like, what?
No, he's not my dad's friend. But he's my dad's favorite director. He really likes like Sideways, About Schmidt. And honestly, whenever we're talking about comedies, I'm always bringing up Taika Waititi as like a really
he's awesome.
He's a really good comedy director. And I feel like Alexander Payne's kind of at that same level because his movies are comedies, but they're elevated to being like better than what you normally see as like a comedy movie. And most of, Sideways is about two guys going like on a wine tasting road trip, but there's like a lot of emotional stuff like that.
And Report Live.
Yeah. And then About Schmidt is actually like about a guy who's retired from a job that he really loves. His wife dies immediately after, and he's like searching for, something to kind of fill that void in his life. And then you've got movies like this where it's about a high school class president election
by MTV,
right, dude? And that's the thing. So this came out strangely in May of 1999. I don't know why they wouldn't do it in like November or something. I don't know. It doesn't feel like
what month in
May. In May. So this was like a pre-summer movie. So it was Paramount MTV. The budget was only $25 million, and this was a bomb. It only got $14 million.
Not surprising.
So, really? Were you not a fan?
I was not. So this is the second time I've seen this, but go on.
Really? I thought you hadn't seen this movie before.
So I had seen this because one of my professors was like really like this movie. So he gave us the script, which I probably still have somewhere back at my home in another state, to look at, to kind of like study and acknowledge. So I was like, is this even a real movie? And I looked up and I found, I'm like, oh, okay. But yeah.
And then you watched the whole thing?
I watched the whole thing because back then it was on Netflix, not on anymore, but it was on Netflix at the time.
Well, so it was nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay, and it's in the Criterion Collection. Before we go forward, though, I gotta say, like, what did you not like about it?
Reese Witherspoon deserved better. Poor girl.
Like the character?
No, just her as an actress.
But how so?
I just thought her character was very one-dimensional. There wasn't really much to her.
I don't know.
She doesn't really have any growth or experience, and then...
Well, so we'll get into that, because I have a reading of this movie that I didn't remember this aspect of it, but we'll get into it once we're talking about the actual content of the movie. But Alexander Payne, he's actually from Omaha, Nebraska. And the one thing I kind of noticed watching...
Was the book set in Omaha, Nebraska?
I haven't read the book.
Okay.
So I'm not sure, but I would think so, especially if they're going to set it there. So he's from Omaha, Nebraska. It's like he's been asked if... Because later on he made a movie called Nebraska, and they were like, oh, do you like making movies? And he's like, I'm just from there.
I'm just from Nebraska.
So it's interesting like that the book must have been set there, or else I don't know why he would have shot it there. And that's the thing, too. I don't... like About Schmidt, I think it starts off in like Wisconsin or something. Sideways takes place mostly in California because wine country. So yeah, like his movies they're set all over. Hell, the Descendants is in Hawaii. So it depends. Obviously, I don't think he's like married to one specific location. But the interesting thing I noticed was that like, and this is kind of true for all of his movies. I remember watching The Descendants in movie theaters and kind of thinking this. He's very minimalist in his cinematography, But watching this and kind of like actually looking for what makes it funny, it's the editing.
It's very stylized. The cinematography, the editing is very stylized.
Everything about the editing is, and that's the thing too. They say comedy is about timing. And that's what you're basically manipulating the time when you're editing, you know, and everything from those goofy freeze frames every time it would go into a character's head. I don't know if you noticed this, every time it froze on any of the characters, it was always really unflattering. Yeah. Whether it was Matthew Broderick, Reese Witherspoon, any of those four main characters, it was always like on the worst face possible. And that was obviously intentional because it's really funny. Like normally in a movie, if you were going to do that, you'd have them smiling or something. So I thought it was funny every single time. It was always like frozen, like almost as if there wasn't any thought put into it. It made it really funny. And one of the first scenes that we have Matthew Broderick and Reese Witherspoon kind of clashing, the editing is what made me laugh because it's the bit where she is raising her hand in class. And the thing you'll notice is it's always like cut. So the first thing you see is her raising her hand. Then it cuts back to Matthew Broderick. Then it cuts to a wide of the whole class not caring. But as the scene goes on, it stops cutting to Reese Witherspoon because you know that she's raising her hand. But it does it so many times that you're kind of like,
okay, her hand's already up. Who else is whose hand else?
And this is like I could have gone through like every scene in the movie, but that was the thing I really noticed. And I've noticed this with all of his movies is that the cinematography is very basic, but not in just like a like filmmaker 101 kind of way where it's just what you need, and then you know edit the scene together. But with this specific time seeing this movie, I was like, the editing is like what's making me laugh most of the time. Yeah. That and all of the acting is really good. A lot of it is like very like exaggerated.
Yeah,
but there's also like the bit where he throws the Chinese food and misses the trash can, and it's the way the camera pans down on the Chinese food, and then it cuts to the janitor's like face of him just being really angry. It's really good. It's all just like classic character comedy because like that's what it is. You have a character. This person's like a type A personality. This person's very laid back. And it's all just about like their interactions and how they clash. It's very like simple. I'd honestly say this is like if you're into comedies and maybe you're interested in writing or like directing, like this would be like a good movie to study, at least in my opinion, because it really like effectively makes you laugh and the writing is pretty good as far as like, because we'll get into it. I have a theory because I'm not going to necessarily disagree with you about Reese Witherspoon, but
she did get a Golden Globe nomination for it.
The thing is like not all like works of fiction need to have, especially with comedies, like again, like we talked a lot about sitcoms and a lot of sitcoms don't have more than, two-dimensional characters or one-dimensional characters because they're supposed to be kind of a joke.
Well, I kind of think in sitcoms that works because usually sitcoms are about 30 minutes and they're even shorter because they have commercial breaks in there. So it's not as grating as it was in this particular case with it being like an almost 2-hour movie, or maybe it was 2 hours.
It was just 90 minutes exactly.
Oh, okay. Oh my God. See, it felt like 2 hours.
I don't know, man. Like I didn't find it grating. This is another thing I've kind of noticed with you in movies is like if a character is not a good person, you tend to turn on the movie. And this is something I've noticed just with my taste, but a lot of there's different types of comedies, and one type that I tend to like is when it's all of the characters are bad people, but you're watching the situation blow up in their face. And I kind of think that's sort of what this is, because the two main characters are Matthew Broderick and Reese Witherspoon, and they are Jim McAllister and Tracy Flick. And they're both terrible people, but in different ways. And they're also likable. That's the thing. Like they have things that you can like about them and hate about them at the same time. And it's just funny watching them clash. At least to me, that's kind of where the comedy comes from. It's like, and this too, with the acting, like the first time we see them together, we know they don't like each other and they don't say anything besides like good morning to each other. And that is purely on both of their acting. You can tell Tracy is kind of, she doesn't dislike him, but she's
very smug.
Yeah, she's smug. But and at that point, she's like, "Oh, hey, Mr. McAllister, want a button?" And he's like, "Oh, hi, Tracy,"
She's very smug and he's very fake.
And that's where, like, I don't think she was given a tough... I don't think she was dealt a shorthand at all, because I think she makes her character... Like, if you were given the script to this movie, like, and it was given to a worse actress than Reese Witherspoon, it wouldn't have been as funny. Because she did so many things to the character that really made her, like, pop. You know, because her character is essentially, she's a brown noser, she's very type A, she's very, like, peppy and, like, you know, a go-getter. She gets straight A's, she's big onto hard work. You could give that character to someone and they would do the character, but they wouldn't be as funny doing it.
Right. No, I
you know, and
that.
that's kind of the thing. Like, I think she is a funny character, and it's all based on her performance, because it's not like she has a line of dialogue that's particularly funny or anything. Like, it's all in the performance, and it comes back to, like, the editing and things like that. This isn't a movie where, like, people say jokes. This is, like, a movie where something funny happens to somebody. And that's where I think, like, if the editing and the acting were, like, the best in this movie, at least in my opinion. Those are the things I'd say are elevated. I think the script is really good as far as, like, screenwriting 101, which is also funny that it got, like, best adapted screenplay. So anyway, back to Alexander Payne. So he's from Omaha, Nebraska. And I was reading some interviews and stuff, and he actually, like, when he's doing comedic work, he said he's really only thinking about, like, silent comedies. So, like, whenever a character like Tracy has, like, a specific, like, facial tic or does something, like, that's where he's driving the comedy from. Like, and that's also why there's a decent amount of slapstick in this movie too. Like, he's big into, like, those Buster Keaton sort of things. He's also into, like, fine art photography, which is interesting because, as I said, his cinematography in all of his movies is pretty basic, although it's really beautiful, especially in a movie like the Descendants, because it's in Hawaii. It's just these gorgeous landscapes and stuff. So that's interesting, because I've never really thought of his cinematography being very, like, bombastic, which might even appeal to you because you've said you like cinematography that doesn't draw attention to itself. So maybe you'd like more of his movies. And he said in an interview that whenever he's, like, seeing people out in public and stuff, everyone was always like, "Oh, Election's my favorite," including his own mother said that's her favorite movie of his. So that's kind of funny.
Also, President Obama said this was his favorite political movie.
It's funny. This is, like, another one of those cases of a movie that bombed at the box office, but it's like, here you go. Like, anyone who sees Alexander Payne is, like, telling him, like, "Oh, Election's my favorite movie." It's funny if he's like, "Well, why didn't you see it then?"
Well, I guess, like, the only thing I can think of, the reason why I bombed is I feel like with it being produced by MTV, I feel like it was marketed a lot towards teens, and this doesn't work as, like, a teen movie. This works more as an adult film.
No, it doesn't.
Marketed to adults.
I think like a mature teenager could laugh at this, like, right. But that's it. It almost reminds me, because I don't, this came out in '99. I was in, like, first grade or something like that, so I wouldn't have even known about this movie. But like, thinking of how it was marketed kind of reminds me of the film Bad Santa. Did you ever see that movie?
No.
So it was marketed as, like, a gross out, like, R-rated comedy. Like, "Oh, you won't believe what this Bad Santa does." And I, as a dumb middle schooler, was like, "Oh yeah, Billy Bob Thornton's gonna be saying some F words. He's gonna be drinking some booze. He's gonna be sleeping with women in the mall." And then you see the movie, and it's Terry Zwigoff, like, dark comedy about, like, this very...
You sound like about a heist?
Yeah, and it's a good movie. That's the funny thing. Like, the title even sucks for the movie because it, like, again, it makes you think it's gonna be like a National Lampoon sort of thing. But it's, like, a good movie. And I remember seeing it, I think the first time I popped it in, I was like, I got bored and I turned it off. But I ended up, like, watching it years later. I think it was actually also after I saw his film Ghost World. And that was the thing, like, once I kind of understood what type of movies he made and I watched it that way, I was like, oh, this is a character piece about a person's, like, redemption arc. And it has, like, yes, he's doing the silly... he's pissing his pants, like, while having kids, like, tell them what they want for Christmas, but it's not that kind of movie where it's like, whoa, look at all the crazy stuff. So I feel like that's probably the same case with this movie. Like you said, I bet it was marketed as like an American Pie kind of thing because that was popular, I think maybe the year after this came out, but that was sort of the way things were going in the comedy world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because then we went from there into like
and one of the characters,
epic movie.
One of the characters, the Paul Metzler, he was in American Pie. He was the guy that dated like the girl who
I've never seen American Pie.
Really? I think you'd enjoy it quite a bit, actually.
I remember my mom told me about American Pie. She says, yeah, your dad wants to see it. So we went to go see it. And she says, yeah, I started just counting the lights on the ceiling in the theater.
You know, it was, when I was a kid, it was considered like the most filthy movie ever. And when I finally saw it, I was like, what are you people, Quakers? Like, what is this? Like, it's like, yeah, there's sex, but there's like art. Anyway, I digress. So the more interesting thing about this movie that I think maybe you'd be kind of more game to talk about is like something I noticed this time, and I don't know if I noticed the last time I saw it, but early in the film, it's actually during the funny hand-raising scene where Matthew Broderick's like, what is the difference between morals and ethics? Mm-hmm. And I think that's what the point of the movie is. And especially because the movie doesn't define it, like Tracy raises her hand and no doubt she probably had the right answer. Mm-hmm. But we never hear her answer because it freeze frames on her face. And then we learn about her relationship with the teacher. And then we never go back to that scene. We never learn what the difference between morals and ethics is.
Okay, so, she has neither, really.
So, actually, no. I have a theory. I looked up what the difference was, like the dictionary definition and stuff. And the thing is, like the definitions for both are so dubious that a lot of people just use them interchangeably. But at least according to the Britannica definition, morals are more personal, they're normative, and they're subjective.
Yeah.
So one person's morals are not going to line up with another person's morals. Mm-hmm. Ethics are kind of the same, except they're based on community standards.
Yeah.
So they're distinguished by, your social setting. So like here in Los Angeles, we might have different ethics than, someone in Lithuania or something.
For example,
I don't know.
We step over homeless people. That's ethical.
Right,
but if we were in Omaha, that probably would not be seen
exactly
as ethical.
So I had this. There are technically 4 main characters in this movie, and I developed this theory that they are the 4 different variations of morals and ethics. And this is what I figured maybe we could argue about for a while or like talk about. Because my theory is that Jim McAllister, the teacher played by Matthew Broderick, has no morals and no ethics. Tracy Flick...
Disagree.
Tracy Flick is ethical but not moral. Paul Metzler is moral and ethical, and his sister Tammy Metzler is moral but not ethical.
Oh, okay.
Now, what do I mean by that? Jim McAllister has like a way of seeing himself as like this nice guy who is there for students, and he would never do anything wrong. When he knows about what Tracy did with his friend the teacher, he's like disgusted by both of them.
Didn't he?
But then how does he act?
Him in?
No. The mother found a love letter he gave to Tracy, and she told the principal.
Well, why is that guy there in the office with them? I thought he was in there because he's the one that reported.
I think he's there to be a witness, because if you're going to interrogate someone behind, you know what I mean? Like for legal reasons, you want to have someone there to like.
Is it ethical to have your friend be there?
It wasn't his choice. I'm pretty sure the principal knew that they were friends. Anyway, my point is, like, so Jim McAllister, he has this way of seeing himself as sort of like the unsung hero of the school. He's looking out for everyone's best interest. But when you look at his behavior, he's not a good person. He cheats on his wife. He cheats on the election. He doesn't care about like the janitor having to clean up his mess and stuff. Like he has a way of seeing himself.
We don't know that he doesn't care. For all we know, he could have picked it up after. There was no implication that he just left that there for somebody else to clean up.
I mean, the implications there by like the janitor having a vendetta enough to turn him in with the fake votes.
See, I never read that scene that way. I just thought the guy just read that as, oh, great, another one of these people that thinks my job is just to clean up.
Adversely, we never see him feel bad about it later either. You got to go by what the film is like telling you, like by what you actually see. Tons of things could have happened off screen, but that's all, just based on your guess.
Well, I mean, the fact that he was cleaning out the fridge.
Well, anyway, let me keep going because we can argue about this more, but at least the way I determined it, like, yes, in his mind, he's very moral and ethical, but based on his actions, he does not hold up to what he, sees other people as doing. Tracy, on the other hand, is ethical, but not moral. And what I mean by that is she always makes sure to, like, with community standards, with how the school sees things, she always makes sure she's seen as the person following the rules and doing the right thing. But on the other side of things, she, is like sleeping with the teacher and stuff. And she, like, even kind of...
But I mean, ethically, the teacher sleeping with the student isn't, by community standards, ethical. So she's not ethical either.
Possibly. And she never gets caught, is what I mean. No matter what bad things she does, she never gets caught, even when she's ripping stuff down. Remember, ethics are based on community standards.
So how the community sees her, not whether or not she follows community standards.
Exactly. So, like, that's what I mean. And that's the same thing with, like, Matthew Broderick, because he gets caught multiple times. Like, but that's the thing. Like, Tracy, I feel like she's very good at following ethical standards, but she doesn't have any, like, morals,
I would challenge to say, because even though she is very good at appearing to follow ethical standards, but has no morals.
Gotcha. Let me finish my list, because I actually, based on how the discussion's going so far, I feel like you probably won't disagree with this.
I also have some other opinions on some
Paul
stuff.
Metzler, moral and ethical, partly because he's kind of written as a stupid person, so he just is always trying to do the right thing. He's very, like, oblivious to other people's, like, he doesn't even know his sister is gay. Like, so he's just like, oh, whoa, what are you guys doing in here? Sorry, I interrupted, but he's always, like, very nice. Like, there's always that, and there's that scene near the end of the movie where he's, dear God, I hope everyone's, like, happy with the election. I hope my sister enjoys Catholic. Like, he's so nice, genuinely. He's like the least hateful person ever. Like, he's just such a nice guy. And again, part of it, I think, is because he's kind of written to be really dim-witted, but, like, he's genuinely, like, wants everyone to be happy and, all that. And as far as, like, him sleeping with, like, his girlfriend's ex-girlfriend.
His sister's ex-girlfriend.
Sorry, his sister's ex-girlfriend. It's oblivious. I don't think he would have done that if he knew that they were dating. Do you know what I mean?
He still committed statutory rape.
Well, he was technically underage, too.
I know, but it's still statutory rape.
So they're both wrong.
Exactly.
Anyway. There's holes in all of this, and this is why I thought this would be a good discussion. Because, again, it's like, ethically, you could base that on the community standards of high school, where kids are hooking up all the time.
Community standards of high school does not acknowledge
exactly. So that's kind of where I was thinking. Like, yes, they shouldn't be having sex legally or morally or whatever, but, like, at least as far as high schools go, it happens all the time. No one really thinks about it. So whatever. Like, at least ethically, if you're talking about, high school social life,
that's
supposedly.
true.
And then his sister, Tammy, she's moral but not ethical. And what I mean by that is she does have, like, a strong sense of, like, what's right and wrong. Like, she even gives that big speech about how no one cares about this except the teachers. And it would be if this, quite frankly, like, as a teenager, I would have voted for her because I was like, yeah, this is a waste of time. Again, it might not have been what the principal wanted to hear, but, like, she had a good idea of, like, the, what people thought.
But then look at the reason why she got into the race. She got into the race as a form of revenge. So
true, but she also lied. But she also dropped out of the race by lying and saying she turned everyone's posters down because she didn't want to be in the race anymore because she knew it was pointless.
She said that because she knew if she did, she would be able to get. She'd be
sent to another school,
and she'd be sent to the Catholic school. So because I feel like if she had morals, she would have turned Tracy in. Because she sells Tracy.
Morals are subjective, though.
Well, if you're doing that, then how can you say her character has morals, then?
Because they're subjective. She, like, for instance, she had a really strong opinion about how her girlfriend left her for her brother, which I feel like most people would probably have a problem with that. So, like, morally, she doesn't think that that's right.
Well, and also, but then Mr. McAllister, on the other hand, could have morals, too. They just may not be ours.
True. And this is I don't even care if you disagree with me. I just figured this is something we could talk a lot about because I think this
you know me, I'm opinionated.
This is what I liked the most about the movie, and this maybe rewatching it with like again, you'll like it better thinking about who's moral, who's ethical, and who isn't. I just thought it was interesting that there were 4 different combinations you could possibly have with those two things, and there were 4 main characters. So maybe you could even argue like. For instance, you said Tracy is the one who has no morals or ethics. Maybe Jim McAllister has morals but no ethics. I guess we're pretty mostly agreed that Paul's the one who would be moral and ethical.
I guess.
Out of the 4 of them, he's the one who's like the least offensive.
He's the least offensive. He also has no idea what's going on.
And again, like besides, like he's
basically Dan Quayle.
So he's sleeping with his underage girlfriend. But what else has he done that was like bad ethically or morally?
Like I said, he's Dan Quayle.
Dan Quayle.
Oh my God, he's literally this guy. I think he was the vice president thing. Essentially, he's basically known for essentially having no idea what's going on half the time and being super underqualified.
Okay, I gotcha. But you see what I mean though. Like besides like sleeping with his girlfriend, like what ethically or morally has he done bad to anybody?
That's true.
Like that's because I was thinking about when I was
about his
the
character. What's interesting about his character is for a 90s sitcom, his portrayal is actually pretty progressive because he's not a stereotypical like Chuck. I mean, he's an idiot, but he's not mean.
And I think he would have been nice. I think he would have supported his sister if he knew that she was a lesbian. I think he would have been like, "Oh, well, you're my sister. I still love you." Like again, like just based on that like little prayer he does near the end of the movie, it's so nice.
Also the fact that he votes for Tracy.
Yeah, that was I almost forgot about that. That was another point I was going to use to say he's moral and ethical because based on his morals, he feels like it's wrong to vote for yourself. And also, like, ethically, he's voting. Like,
so the real question is: should we really have anybody? Should we really have somebody who's moral and ethical in a political office? Because then we'd end up with somebody like him who has no idea what's going on.
Well, it's all very.
I.e., Dan Quayle.
This is like, and this is the way I view the world too. Is like, there's no black and white. There's shades of gray, and that's kind of why I love
the 50 Shades of Grey.
And this is also kind of proving my like, because you said like Tracy is like very like. One-dimensional, two-dimensional. I don't think we'd be having such a good argument about this if that were true. Because you can really go through all 4 of these main characters and like really dissect their actions.
Her character kind of just reminds me of literally every Melissa McCarthy character ever. Just some loud, obnoxious person. That's literally her. She's just some obnoxious, loud person.
True. Wait, Tracy? Tracy Fleck? I don't know. Like the thing with her is like she would be the best pick for the school. Regardless of whether she's a good person or not, she is going to do everything to the best of her ability, work really hard. So, like, even though I probably wouldn't like her as a person in real life.
Something unethical that she does that would have violated community standards that people saw. And she cut Paul Metzler out of the yearbook.
No, that wasn't Paul. That was the teacher she was seeing.
Oh. Whoops.
Which is probably... I wouldn't blame her for doing that. Although, like, the fact that she thought she was, like, in love with him and then she's dropping him so hard. I don't know.
First off, I have some stuff about the movie I want to talk about.
Gotcha. Yeah. And we'll go back to the morals and ethics because... Well, actually, I'll just finish it off here. The reason I feel like the 2 negative characters were Jim McAllister and Tracy Flick, which, again, I don't think we necessarily disagree about that. They probably were the 2 worst. But as far as like not ethical or moral and then ethical but not moral, like they're the 2 characters who end up unhappy at the end of the movie. Jim McAllister like gets...
Tracy doesn't end up unhappy.
She says that she has no friends and she wished that she could connect with people more.
Fast forward to farther in the end.
That's what I'm talking about. By the end, he has lost his job. He has no friends. He has no wife. He's unhappy, but he's like kind of in denial about it. But Tracy, in her little, monologue in her head when she's in college, she's like, the only thing I really regret.
Past college.
Well, again, that's the last time. It's the last thing we hear about her is that she just feels she doesn't have the ability to connect to people. She never had friends in high school. She thought it'd be different in college. She still doesn't have friends, and so that's the thing. Like both of them kind of end up unhappy. Like. Her more inside and him outside. Like he loses his job. All of his material things in life are gone. But in his head, he's like, oh, I'm doing really great. And then it's the opposite for her. Like on the outside, she's doing really great. But in her head, she's like, I really wish I had a friend or like, you know, a real relationship with somebody. And yeah, she gets into politics, but I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean that has learned how to make a friend. If anything, it probably means she's still like manipulating people.
But that's what she wanted. She wanted high political office.
Exactly.
So
She's getting everything she wanted, but like she's empty inside. And so that's kind of the reason I came to the conclusion the two of them were the ones that like lacked.
So I think for me, she ends up a little bit happier than him because she at least does get professional fulfillment.
Yes.
He doesn't get professional or into your film. So I feel like she does squeak out a little bit over him.
Hilariously, he thinks he's happy. That's the thing. Like, he's like,
until he throws the smoothie.
But that's what I mean.
If that was today, he would have been shot.
But that's what I mean when I say he's lying in his head.
Yeah.
Like, and that's why I say, like, the two of them, to me, feel like the ones who are, like, lacking. I guess, looking at my little chart here, they both lack morals. That's what I have here. I guess if you lack morals, then you will be an unhappy person. Because the other ones, you know, Paul, he's moral and ethical, according to me. Tammy Metzler is moral but not ethical, and both of them end up happy in their own way. But Tracy and Jim, they at least, again, according to my theory, they lack morals and therefore end up unhappy.
Incorrect theory.
Argue with me in the comments, guys. I just think this is interesting, and I think it's like something... Like, if I were teaching a philosophy class, this would be like an awesome movie to just have a freaking like 2-hour debate in class, because it's very deep. Like, despite it being like a 90-minute little comedy in high school, it's got a lot going on in it, and I think that's probably why it was nominated for an Oscar, despite it, like the story being very basic. It was nominated
for what it should have been nominated for, which was the story.
Yes.
So things about the movie. Okay, let's talk about what I didn't like.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had the floor for like 40 minutes.
So you've hit the nail on the head, sort of. One of the reasons I don't like it is there's nobody I can really root for in this movie. Everybody in this movie, as Q Star would say on his channel, this is an everybody sucks situation.
I'm surprised you didn't like Paul. He's so nice.
Well, no, but he was just kind of blah. I didn't know enough about him to really be like, yeah, Paul. He was just kind of blah. There was I couldn't root for, you know, not Tammy, because she was a creepy stalker, which I was offended by the portrayal of lesbianism in 1999. This is like when Will and Grace was on the air, so we were starting to open our minds up, and it was still a very antiquated portrayal.
I didn't see her as a stalker. I saw her as like a...
She was literally a stalker. Do you not see how she portrays their relationship? Oh my god, we did this, and then I gave her like my hair or something. It was weird. It was very, very weird.
It was immature. That's the thing. Like, it's not good, but it's.
And then she almost kind of crosses over into like Predator territory with the way she's trying to convince, you know, other girl that she's into the makeout session. So that was a little kind of an antiquated portrayal for me. But anyway, so she's kind of weird. She does bad things. Don't like her. And then we have Tracy, which, by the way, the name Tracy, can we make a more basic political name? I love it.
Even though she is not a good person, it's probably
she's not a person, and I was torn.
It's Reese Witherspoon's fault I like her so much, because again, she adds so much character that she's like funny. Again, like even though she does terrible things.
I was torn on Tracy towards the end, because it's like I hate her. I don't want her to win. I don't want her to succeed at anything because she's a terrible person. But then we just watch her cry for 5 minutes. I'm like, this is so sad. This is like what she wanted her entire life, but still wasn't into her character. Then we had Matthew Broderick, who, by the way, in real life, I guess actually killed somebody. When he was drunk on vacation.
Oh, yeah. Hit and run, right?
Yeah,
jeez.
And he got away with it, but talk about moral and ethics. But anyway,
look at Marky Mark. He freaking...
Don't get me started on Marky Mark.
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, it happens all the time. Anyway, so...
And then we have his character. His character, you know, kind of started off... I was worried, I think, when I was rewatching, because I totally forgot how everything played out. I forgot a bunch of the plot lines. But when I was watching it play out, I was worried I was in the same situation that I had with Requiem for a Dream, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, where I was like, yes, there's one character I can believe is the moral center, and then like it's like almost in the movie, and then it turns out he sucks too. That was really mad.
Oh, Matthew Broderick.
Yeah, I was worried it was me. That's true, but he becomes unlikable pretty quick.
again, at least with me, like the whole trash thing, like was almost kind of, it's right after his little internal monologue at the beginning. And I feel like that was almost kind of signaling that because this is much like in reality too, like people always see themselves as the hero of their own story. Mm-hmm. You take these people who are bad people, like, killers or something, they're not going to see that what they did was wrong. And that's kind of the thing about like writing a realistic character. And that's why I liked all of the internal monologues too, is like, Tracy's version of what happened is different from Jim's version of what happened, because she can't be wrong. She works so hard, and it's the same thing with him. Like, I felt like that little bit with the janitor, besides just being a funny little moment, was also just kind of showing that the school doesn't see him the way he sees himself in the school. To him, he's like...
the school does seem that way. He was voted Teacher of the Year 3 times in a row. That janitor scene, I see they were trying to do something for me. It really didn't work. Because then just maybe, especially when we find out why, and the fact that this guy was making all these assumptions based on this Chinese food. Let me put it this way, because I know, like, appealing to morality, like, tends to... Like, if he's such a good person, why didn't he turn in his friend for sleeping with a student? Because he knew about it. He could have ended that relationship, but he decided to be complicit. So okay, let me ask you this question: when you were in high school, did you know anybody who slept with underage people?
Do I know other students? Or
underage students.
If I knew a teacher,
well, no, that wasn't my question. But students that were sleeping with underage students when it's technically illegal to do so.
It happens in every high school.
But did you turn them in?
No, but I am also not an authority figure. I don't hold.
I'm trying to make.
I get the point you're trying to make.
Essentially, they were.
There's a difference between a teacher and a student, though.
That's fair.
He's in a position of power and authority.
I'm just talking about because they're because I'm not defending that.
No, and I'm not
just
saying.
I'm just saying because they saw themselves as equal, friendship levels. I was trying to put that on the same level as if one of your friends did that with somebody who was underage. I mean, obviously.
Yeah. If I knew a teacher was sleeping with a kid, I would for sure have said something.
And then, so there's I did, and then we had the teacher character, which, I'm like, so then I was like trying to be like, was this relationship real at all? And it wasn't. I don't think it was, because the movie goes out of his way to make the guy look like a predator. The way he talks to her is like grooming 101.
Yep.
And so...
Well, and that's the thing, too. Tracy, like...
And especially when he's talking to Matthew Broderick's character about her, it's not, I love her. It's what... He's literally...
Her,
yeah.
No, that's the thing, too, with Tracy. Like, despite what she was doing was, like, not good in most people's eyes, she is still a child. Like, that's the thing. Like, he was the adult in that situation, and she couldn't consent. Even if she said, I love you or whatever.
Well, and also... But then if you also think about it, then it's really hard after to fault her for her actions, because now her moral compass is all screwed up because of this whole relationship. Like, I feel like that's one of the reasons why she wasn't able to form relationships so early with anybody.
Well, she seems to have, like, a superiority complex. Because even when because she's like, I work harder than anybody. If anyone...
I mean, she's not wrong when we see that classroom.
No, absolutely not. But, like... That's the thing, like, the idea of someone even thinking they could be at her level, she just automatically has this, like, I'm better than you.
It's essentially the difference between confidence and arrogance. Confidence is when you know you're good. Arrogance is when you want everybody else to know that you're good.
Exactly, and that's the thing, too, like, she sees herself as superior to all of her peers, and she does work very hard, but again, it's almost like it's not for the betterment of the school for the sake of being better, it's just to check a box on her resume.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like, she is good, like, she would be a good class president, but for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
And that's again, I love, and I think that's a difference between you and me too, because I love Eternal Sunshine, and it's like,
well, I love it too.
But that's the thing. It's like whenever there's a character who's not perfect, it's like, I don't know, you tend to resist.
There's a difference, I think, between being non-perfect and being unperfect and being completely unlikable. Like, I feel like
but that's the thing with this movie. I don't think anyone is unlikable. I think they all have likable and unlikable things.
Well, if that's the case, I feel like their unlikable parts totally outweigh the few likable things they have about them. And then,
well, Paul, you only have one thing you didn't like.
Well, Paul, I didn't really get enough of information about him to really form an opinion about him. He's not really.
But according to your thing, you just said that there's more that you don't like about him than you like about him.
Well, yeah, because the only thing I know about him is that he's blah. That's literally it.
True.
That's all we know.
Well, again, he's very nice, and he genuinely cares about other people.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that was and agreed with what you said earlier. Like, he was not written like most jocks in movies at that time,
mm-hmm.
and I thought that was refreshing too, because he's the football star who was injured and he can't play football probably ever again,
mm-hmm.
but he just genuinely cares about all the students at the school.
Mm-hmm.
He's the sort of person who got into the running for the presidential thing for all the right reasons,
mm-hmm.
but it wasn't his idea.
That's
he
true.
wouldn't have run if he hadn't been made to run, but he was like the person who would get into it for all the right reasons. And that's actually kind of sad too, when he's talking to the teacher about like, oh, I've got all these ideas about the dance. And, it's like cute. He's already so pumped to like, oh, this is going to be the best year ever kind of thing. And it's really...
Well, and then we had the principal. I didn't like the principal either because he was essentially a dictator. He wanted to squash any sort of dissent, which I was like, seriously.
And that's why I liked Tracy so much, or Tammy, excuse me. They have such similar names. I keep mixing them up. But like, Tammy...
I don't really know how much of what Tammy said was actually genuine. Because
I genuinely think she would have dissolved student council. I really do think she was going to do everything she said she would do.
Well, I think she was, but was she doing it for the right reasons? She was just doing it to tick off her brother and that chick that he was dating, her ex-girlfriend or whatever.
I feel like she's diametrically opposed to, like, Tracy. Jeez, I need to, like, think before I say the name. Because she hated, like, how fake... In fact, that was another... They were all praying at the end of the movie, and she's like, oh, and... F that bitch Tracy Flick.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was like her thing. She was very genuine and real to people. And she wasn't like a perfectly like nice person like her older brother, but like even with her like girlfriend, she's very like she wears her emotions on her sleeve.
Well,
and it's like the opposite of Tracy, because Tracy is all very different behind closed doors than she is when out with the students,
Well, and then now she has, then she's having another delusional relationship with this other girl that she met at the.
I mean,
there is nothing in the flashback.
It's framed as not. That's the thing too.
It's framed as not the way the scenes they show are non-romantic at all. It's basically just this chick's nice to her and she's a bad girl.
Yeah, so like, is it just the characters that bother you though,
well,
or is it like?
See, here's my thing. It's just I have a hard time getting into the story when I don't have anyone
to relate to.
It's like
you need a protagonist to take you through the story. No,
I need somebody. I need somebody like. They don't necessarily need to be like good person, because one of my favorite movies is Evita, and Evita is not really the best person ever. However, she's relatable and sympathetic. The way I watch it, and I couldn't find any of them relatable or sympathetic. I thought they were all kind of just gross people that I couldn't wait to see. And I do like the implication though, like at the end, by showing that he's a Republican senator, that she's sleeping with him. Like that's the implication.
Again, it's Tracy Flick, man.
Especially when Matthew Broderick says, "I wonder what she's doing in that limo."
Oh man, no, it's
Also, when he throws this movie at him, he's able to run away. I'm like, that would not happen. He would have been shot.
Did you at least find the movie funny?
Well, so here's the thing. I have a trouble. To me, this movie is more of a tragedy than a comedy. It reminded me a lot of I, Tonya. And people go, I, Tonya was so funny. I'm like, really? I just found the movie sad.
I, Tonya really happened, though.
To be fair, when I was in school, somebody presented a script to the class. In this whole time, I thought this was a drama. And everybody's like, no, it's a comedy. It is? I have trouble reading movies like this.
I, Tonya still, right?
Not a ton. No, somebody, when I was in film school, somebody wrote a script for one of my classes.
Oh.
And it was a comedy.
Well, yeah.
When I read it, I'm like, this is not a comedy. This is a drama. This is sad.
It's something I've noticed watching films with you, though, is like, because I get where you're coming from. Like, you just want to relate to one of the characters on, like, some
sort of level, yeah.
But again, like, so when we started this review, I said that this comedy is bad things happening to bad people. And that's kind of where the comedy comes from, is, again, it's like Matthew Broderick screwing up his liaison with this woman.
Also,
it's watching Tammy Metzler lose it and rip everything off. It's like, again, it's a style of
not
comedy.
Tammy Metzler, Tracy Flick.
Thank you. I swear, like, Tammy and Tracy are like, thanks for writing the freaking same. It's such a similar name.
I think that was done on purpose.
Possibly.
Why, I'm not sure.
Possibly. But anyway, well, again, to me, they were like foil characters because they were very. Again, one wears their heart in their sleeve, but is very ethically bad, and the other one keeps all their emotions hidden,
right,
but is very ethically so. So when Tracy loses it and like rips up all the posters, you know, like, there's something like funny about her snapping when Matthew Broderick litters in the ground and never picks it up that we know of, and you see the janitor's reaction. There's like something funny about, especially it's like at the end with the setup and payoff of the janitor being the one that screws him over. That's funny because, you know, he got screwed over at the beginning and he's getting his revenge.
Through the trash? That's my problem. He just sees crumpled paper. He opened every crumpled piece of paper that he comes across.
That's part of what's funny, is how did you even know to check the trash? But anyway, yeah, like, that's the thing with this. To me, that's why it's funny. But I have noticed that with you. It's like, even if the point is that the characters are bad, it's like it's just hard to connect to you. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just something I find interesting.
It must be one of the curses of being a perfect person. I'm not a perfect person.
I'm a perfect person.
Well,
sorry. I was imagining one of those freeze frames from the movie. Like, just
I am.
You wouldn't be frozen like that. In this movie, your eyes would be you'd have like one eye open and one. So just my thing with this movie is, I think it's a little too. It's essentially a commentary on politics, and I think it's a little too real for me, especially right now. So I'm like, I find it hard to laugh at it because I know what it's saying, and I know that it's true. So I'm like, I can't watch this and be like, oh my god, this is so hilarious. I'm like, oh, yeah, this actually happens. Isn't it sad? It's a good movie for deep discussion, despite the fact it's like a teen comedy that's 90 minutes, like the whole ethics versus morals thing.
I will say that it's probably one of the greatest tragedies I've seen put to film. Also, I did appreciate the literary reference of the Scarlet Letter, with the bee sting. I was like, why did they do that? And I'm like, he needed to be marked as the adulterer. And so anytime everybody sees it, they're just like, what happened? And he's reminded of what he did.
I actually never caught that. Like, so that's a nice little illumination that I've never picked up on before.
Also, I couldn't find the not his wife, but the other wife, friend person thing. That he
I thought his wife was prettier than the woman he was cheating on his wife with.
Yeah,
what was
the cheating one? This is the cheating girl's name. What was it, like June?
Something? It was
whatever her name.
But...
See, I couldn't even be on her side because you can tell when she tells what's-her-face the story, she purposely withholds the fact that she's
the one who called him.
She called him. She came to him. She asked him to meet him there. Not saying what he did was right, but I'm saying is she's not throwing her out of the house.
No.
She probably was like, oh, he asked me to come to a hotel with him. And, of course, I said no because I couldn't hurt you. But I was, like, watching it. His wife, though, I was like, why does she look so familiar? Because, and this was actually almost one of my sitcom questions when I was preparing those, it was because I was like, she looks so familiar. She plays the daughter of Miles, who is Rose's boyfriend for most of the Golden Girls.
Okay. I probably have not seen that because I haven't seen that much of the Golden Girls. But yeah, she looked familiar. I feel like I've seen her in something.
She's been in a ton of stuff, yeah.
Yeah. What a crazy... But yeah, I don't know. It's... Maybe going back and... Because were you thinking of the morals versus ethics thing going into it? Or was that something I picked up on myself? Or like...
Going into it, I knew because the fact that... Because I've noticed a lot of times whenever they have... movies that take place in schools, and they'll show towards the beginning some sort of lesson that they're teaching. It usually plays into the main message of the plot. There was another, of course, it's a really bad ABC Family movie, but it's called like High School Confidential or something. And I remember there was a lesson thing where they're talking about the book Animal Farm. And the plot of that movie is basically these oppressed people like rise up to quote unquote dismantle, the hierarchy, and essentially end up creating a new hierarchy with them at the top, which is basically what Animal Farm's all about. It's a cautionary tale about that happening. And so ever since I saw that movie like years ago, I've started to pay attention. So when they said moral ethics, I'm like, yeah, okay, that's going to be a big player. That's going to be a big play here.
The reason I'm asking is I'm wondering if this.
I don't think I didn't pick it up to the level that you did, but I knew it was going to be a part of the movie.
I want to see if you like. I don't know. Maybe next time we talk about something you can come up with, because I'm curious if you're gonna come up with a different combo for the characters that I did with the morals versus ethics. Which one's moral? Which one's ethical? Which one's both? Which one's neither? All that sort of thing. And I'm wondering, the reason I'm picking at this is for any of our listeners who've been following along, T actually didn't initially like Memento, and then the day after, just because of talking about themes and stuff, was like, actually, I really like it. I've seen it.
I watched
so
it again.
I'm wondering if talking about the deeper side of this is going to have the same effect on you, where you're going to be like, I rewatched it and I really like it, despite me hating all of the characters.
What's weird is like I have a hard time liking movies that I feel like I can't sit down and watch with like my family. Just like I don't know if I want to watch this with like my parents or something.
I think you can watch this with your family.
Also, question. This is like ever since even the first time I saw this question. Was Matthew Broderick's character into Tracy at all?
That I forgot about until that one scene, and I was like, yikes.
Yeah.
Where it's like Tracy saying
he gets
all that.
really into, because it's like he was trying to find something to
that might have
arouse
also,
him. His wife wasn't working, so he was fantasizing about that side chick. She just broken up with him, or just rebuffed him. So he was like, "Oh, okay, never mind."
She was also. It's unclear, but the way she said it also made it seem like maybe she was flirting with him.
Oh, at the beginning, I want to be special, which again shows how messed up her relations are with male authority figures. Which is why I think she's totally sleeping with that Republican senator at the end.
But yeah, I don't know. I'm curious if this is going to be something that you look back on and you like a little bit more. Same thing with Eternal Sunshine. You hated it when we left, and then, now it's like, oh, I really liked that movie.
Well, I think I changed my mind after we talked it through like 10 minutes later. I think I was still in the theater when I changed my mind. I think I was, but at first I was like, I hate this. So recommend from you, I'm assuming?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I really like this. I think, honestly, I'd have to rewatch. It's probably like this or The Descendants is my favorite Alexander Payne movie. Mm-hmm. And this is also something that maybe we should look at some more of his movies, because this is kind of the typical one of his movies. None of the characters are usually perfect. Mm-hmm. And it's usually something very heart-wrenching going on. Like The Descendants, it's George Clooney finds out that his wife is in an accident and ends up in a coma. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, he finds out that she was cheating on him. Mm-hmm. And he has to decide to pull the plug or not. And on top of that, he's also... like
I think he should recuse himself from the situation at that point.
But my point is, like, this is an Alexander Payne movie. Like, here is a flawed character.
Well, I'm not asking for perfect characters. I'm just asking characters that are at least somewhat likable.
But maybe we should pick out another flick, like about Schmidt. Might actually like
a Tracy flick.
But let us know if you want us to review something in the future. Be sure to subscribe if you like what you heard. Click the bell for notifications.
Ding.
Thank you so much for hanging out with us, and we'll see you guys next time.
Later.
Reels on the Rocks is a production of La Prince Laboratories. It is edited by Pat Mars and produced by Alejandro Castillo, with original artwork by Asa Sparza. Follow us on Twitter @ReelsOnTheRocks and tweet at us with any movies or topics you'd like us to discuss in the future.